My name is Dr. Tim Errington. I'd like to welcome you here today. This presentation is being recorded, so for those people who are late, if you want to share any of this material, then please go ahead and find it. We'll be sending it out to all our list, and it'll be out on our social media as well. Today, we are going to talk about something that is extremely dear to my heart, and that is avoiding and recovering from injury. This is something that has blighted my sporting career on numerous occasions over the past few decades. I've learned a few things along the way, so let's see whether we can learn something today. We're going to talk about it from the perspective of a chiropractor and also from the perspective of a professional fitness and conditioning coach. And with that said, I'd like to welcome Chris Chiam here. She's the fitness and training manager of Fitness First, and she's got some great information. I'm going to be doing more of a setting the scene, more of an introduction, and then Chris is going to come along with a bit more technique, some more technical advice for you. I'd also like to thank our Jerry Sim for helping set this event up. It's definitely safe to say that we all want the same thing, whether it be the individual, the fitness trainer, or the therapist. We all want the same thing. We want you to stay injury free. But it's quite a complicated thing. There's not just one thing that we must do. There's a number of things that we must take into consideration, a number of action steps and strategies that we must incorporate into our life if we're going to stay injury-free. I think it's important that we adopt the right mindset. We want to put ourselves in the right state. We want to have the right state of mind, and we want to give ourselves the best possible chance of staying injury-free. Now, we're going to have 3 polls as we go through this. So I'm just going to ask Jerry if he could pop up the first one for you. Basically, I'm asking you, how often do you work out? I'll just leave it just a few moments so you can answer that for me. How often do you work out? Well, it's interesting. Well, it's changing. Yeah, interesting. So, okay, I'll just take the stats there. Over a third of you are working out daily, which is great. A third, just over a third weekly. So I would imagine that's the weekly warriors. And then again, there's a fifth of the people out there are saying that they work out once in a blue moon. So maybe I can inspire people in that number to step up a little bit and work out a bit more often. That would be a good thing, I believe. Let's just move that out the way. Okay. So today we're talking about injuries and why this is so important. We know that injuries can form some of life's biggest setbacks. If you get injured, it can literally change your life. And I know it's happened to me. I don't want it to happen to any of you out there, but I'm sure already you have suffered from injuries at some stage. Any of us can suffer from injury at seemingly any time. For example, any quick movements, twists, jerks, falls, impacts. These can happen to us pretty much any time, especially when we're engaging in some kind of sport. We have the potential of injuring almost any joints, whether it be in our spine, our pelvis, or whether it be our knees or our hips. They can all be injured. Whatever your sport, we can all suffer from injury. And generally what's happening is that our weakest link is being exposed. So what we want to do is start to learn a bit more about our body. What is our weakest link? What can we do to protect it, strengthen it, so that that weakest link does not snap, if you like? And of course, this doesn't only apply to the sports people out there. Life is a marathon in itself. If we're going to get through this marathon of life, I hope it's long and I hope it's healthy. Certainly 80 plus, why not 90 plus years? It's a marathon, and we got to look after ourselves. It's so easy to become injured, not just on the sports field, but also just navigating this amazing thing, which is called our life. It reminds me of a few years ago when I was working in Spain. I worked we call it the Costa del Golf, and it's in southern Spain. And I worked in Marbella. That's where my first practice was for many, many years. And my job seemingly became to keep elderly people who had retired to southern Spain. My job was to keep them on the golf course. But what I realized very quickly, that people that were forced to retire from golf at an early age, so maybe in the 60s, which means they're potentially losing out 20 years. But people, when they're forced to retire from their sport, they lose something that ignites their passion in their life. And people tend to go downhill very quickly when they can't engage in the sport that they love. So we really, really want to be mindful of this. And we want to start reading our bodies a bit closer. We should pay attention to how our bodies are communicating with ourselves, because at any one time, our bodies are always talking to us. We say in chiropractic, we say in engineering, I consider myself a spinal engineer. Structure determines function. We are all like machines. We have moving parts. And of course, we live in this gravity environment, and we're constantly moving ourselves through gravity. And this, of course, is what we call exercise. Now, our body has this perfect design. It's designed perfectly through evolution to do its job, which is to move and to run and to do all the things it needs to do. And it has a perfect design. Most of us were born and developed this perfect design. Our spine has got 3 curves, which are, of course, the shock absorbers that absorb all the tension and stresses of life. We're designed to be strong and to be efficient. And we're also designed to have optimal biomechanics. And this means that all our joints moving in the right way. Joints have a direction of movement. If our joints are twisted or whatever, then it's suboptimal. And then this increases the chance of injury. So we really, really want to make sure that all our joints are working effectively and are in alignment. But of course, no two people are the same. And we really need to start understanding our own body. Of course, we didn't come with an instruction manual. That would have been a nice thing indeed, but we didn't. We are constantly learning about our bodies as we go through life. And that's why one of my great passions is helping people learn about their bodies. And I think today is just one of these moments where we can share some things that we've learned along the way that perhaps can help you. So think about this. If you are a body with lots and lots of moving joints, if you have altered biomechanics in one joint, so maybe you've got a stiff left hip, for example, well, then there's going to be compensation, and there's going to be overcompensation in other joints. And this is why it's a classic situation that when you have a problem in one part of your body, then other things start going wrong. The body's always compensating. So it's really, really important, I think, and every day, that we take time to stretch. We look at our alignment. Do we need to make changes? We should be moving our joints through their natural range of motion. And when you stretch into slight discomfort so that we are increasing or maintaining our perfect physiological range of motion in all our joints. We don't want to be stiffening up, because of course, joints that become stiff, muscles that become stiff, inevitably will be the ones that become injured. So we want to be training all our different muscle groups as we go through from week to week. It's vital that we take time to do this. Of course, traditionally, people tend to concentrate when they're thinking about muscles in making their muscles big and strong. Yeah. I know that's the case. I see people down the gym and they're just pumping iron, pumping iron. And what are they doing? They're shortening the muscles. Now, unless they're stretching them as well, then they're setting themselves up for injury. So we really want to be thinking of the quality of our tissues, the quality, not just making them strong, but the quality. It's the fibers in them. Do we have elasticity in there? What about our reflexes? We want our reflexes to be strong and nimble to keep us out of trouble. So what we want to be doing, of course, is we want to develop a strong, resilient structure so that we can bounce back if we have a little fall or a twist or a knock. Yeah. So to do that, we want to make sure that in our routines, we're mixing things up. We don't just want to be doing the same exercises day to day. We want to be, if we have routines, we want to break our routines up and try new things. This makes our training routine more natural to our lifestyle. And I always like to remind people, and I find it really interesting, that some of the most healthy people on the planet don't actually exercise. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but think about it. What they're actually doing is that these people are living a very, very active life. And what we're doing with exercise and going to the gym is we are replacing activity, because now we have this life which is very sedentary, and we want to try and live as close to this active life that these really healthy people, I'm talking about people in the blue zones, right? People that don't live in cities, they work in the fields, in the countryside, they're very, very active. They probably don't need to exercise, perhaps like you and I do. So we want to mix it up. We want to be working different body parts of our structure all the time. And then, of course, I would not be a good chiropractor unless I said, please don't forget your core. Super, super important. Now, I'm assuming that almost everybody out there has had some injuries. I myself have had the full spectrum, and I can break them down into acute injuries and chronic injuries. And we all suffer them, whether it be the spine, my back, limbs, shoulders. I've done it all. I've broken many, many bones. Rugby was my career, and it was a pretty tough game. But it's not what happens to us, it's how we cope, I believe, that matters so important. Do you just reach for the medical bottle? Or maybe you go for a massage, or do you use a physio or TCM perhaps? Or do you just lie on the sofa and rest? I think it's really important that you think of how you cope with injuries when they happen. And so what we want to do is understand our physiology. That means how our body works. We should always be touching in, checking in with our body. That's what I meant to say. We should be checking in. How is our body communicating? What's hurting? What feels stiff? And then when we have a problem, an injury, what is the etiology? That means, how was it caused? If we put all this information together, then we can actually come up with the cause very often becomes the solution. So we can break it down into acute injuries and chronic. So acute injuries are things that just happen. It's some kind of trauma, perhaps. Could be a fall, a twist, or maybe an impact. I had plenty of those playing rugby. Unless you have a fracture, which would be a severe trauma, then most of these will be soft tissue injuries, maybe muscle strains, we strain muscles, or perhaps sprains of joints. So we strain muscles. That's where we tear muscles perhaps, or pull our muscles, or we sprain joints. That's when the soft tissues around the joint, perhaps the ligaments or perhaps the cartilage even, gets damaged. Okay, so these are acute. And when it comes to acute, the signs of acute injury, we can think of an acronym, but an acronym would be SHARP. SHARP, we learned this at chiropractic school. SHARP stands for swelling, heat, altered function, redness, and pain. These are all the signs that you have an acute injury. And then how do you alleviate them? Well, you can think of another acronym, and it used to be in the old days, RICE. So RICE would be rest, apply ice, compress the injury to reduce the inflammation, and then to elevate, again, to reduce the inflammation. Now, we've learned more recently that not only do we want to be doing right, but we want to be restoring function as quickly as possible. So in the old days, when we had a plaster of Paris on our ankle injury, that wasn't perhaps so good, because we were healing, but we were healing with a very, very stiff joint. There was lots of scar tissue around it. So we want to restore function very, very quickly when we have any kind of trauma, any kind of injury. So that's acute injury. Then, of course, we have chronic injury. Now, chronic injury, you can look at it as something more long-term. It's generally something that's thought of as being something perhaps over 10 years, but I think you could look at it as something a bit less than that. But this is usually something that's caused by something repetitive, some kind of repetitive strain, perhaps, or even an acute injury that was never allowed to heal properly. These become chronic injuries, and they very, very often become degenerative concerns. So you start getting arthritis in these joints. Now, these are the most problematic. These are the ones that are very likely to become life-changing or career-ending, which was in my case. What happened to me? Well, I don't mind sharing. I was running around on rugby fields for many, many years on frozen pitches in the north of England, quite often getting injured. But what I didn't know was that my knee was out of alignment. I literally had developed flat feet. My knees had rolled in, and my knees were out of alignment, and it was causing this wear and tear in my knees. And when I got into my late 30s, I had tremendous pain and I couldn't play anymore. And I had some surgery, which luckily was a successful surgery. And I've managed to restore things to my former glory, should we say. So I'm doing most things again. But I want you to think about what I just said. If you have got any weight-bearing joints that are out of alignment, then these will eventually wear out. So you could think in terms of people getting hip replacements or knee replacements. Most of these have been chronic problems over many, 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 many years. And when you look at the cause, the etiology, we find that very often these have been weight-bearing joints that are out of alignment. And you can think of many, many, many things. People develop runner's knee and rotator cuff injuries, low back injuries, hip injuries, groin pulls. There's all sorts of aches and pains and pulls that we can develop. But if you don't sort these out, if you don't find a cure or resolution, then these will gradually become chronic injuries. Remember, any joint can be chronically inflamed and therefore eventually arthritic. Okay, so that's the acute against chronic. It's important that you understand the difference. Okay, right, now we're on to slide 6. We now have poll 2. Now, what I'm interested in is knowing how often do you experience pain during sport? I know in the old days, for me, it was nearly all the time. So why don't you tell me, is it every time or is it sometimes? Well, I find it extremely interesting that nobody never has pain when they do their sports. Now, of course, this is a talk about sports injuries, so maybe everybody on here suffers from sports injuries. So I don't know, but that's interesting. So if I just look at the stats there, a third of you out there experience pain every time, or every time you do a sport. It's either during your sport or after. And then 2/3 of you sometimes have pain. I think if I would think about the sports that I do, I would go into that middle bracket. Sometimes I experience pain, but of course, as a chiropractor, I know how to read my body, so it doesn't concern me. I know what changes I need to make. So that, I think, is a really interesting little statistic there. So perhaps many of you are weekend warriors. You know, in the last poll, we saw that there's quite a few of you out there are doing your sports once a week, perhaps at the weekend. I was a weekend warrior for many years in the old days when I was studying very, very hard. I didn't have time to train so hard. Now I try and be a little bit more consistent. But certainly we see them every weekend out there, millions of people out there, the weekend warriors. Is it a bad thing? No, it's a good thing. We have busy lives. Staying active and connecting with your friends, this can only be seen as a good thing. But the truth is, Monday is probably the busiest day that our clinics have. People calling in and saying they've hurt themselves over the weekend. And this typically is what happens to weekend warriors, because we are not always stressing our bodies stiffen up during the week. And it puts us in a situation where it's quite easily to hurt ourselves. If we stiffen up during the weeks, it inevitably leads to some kind of injury and therefore pain. And of course, as we get older, we tend to stiffen up more and more. And of course, I tell all my clients, we don't have to stiffen. It's just something that happens if you're not looking after yourself and stretching and using chiropractic. Getting older does not mean we have to suffer more injuries. It doesn't mean we have to stiffen up. What we need is strategies. We need to be smart about how we look after ourselves. But what if we think about it? What could be our future downfall? I know that if I don't stretch, if I don't look after myself, I will have a downfall like I did in the past. There is more water under my bridge. I'm probably heading for some kind of injury in the future. I don't know. I'm looking after myself because I love skiing. I love to do what I do. And I'm really looking after myself so that I can be skiing for at least another 20 years. But all of us, we could have a downfall in the future. So it's really important that we create more and more healthy habits, and then perhaps recognize the bad habits we've got. And they could be bad posture, it could be not moving enough during the day. I think it's really important that we have a good routine, a daily routine of proactivity, where we're playing and planning for the long game. Okay, I think of my life as a long game. It's definitely a long game as far as I'm concerned, and I want to stay healthy for at least another 25 years. And how am I going to do that? By being smart. Okay. Well, let's go to poll 3. Let's ask now. This is the last question I want to ask. What do you tend to do when you encounter pain? There's my question. What do you tend to do? Well, I think that's really interesting again. Now there's a good spread of strategies. I myself made the mistake of enduring and carrying on in my rugby days. Now there was a big cost for me at the end. Some people stop and sit it out. I understand that. Sometimes you have to. Self-help, painkillers, pain relief. Yeah, I tried that. That didn't turn out well for me, that's for sure. Seeking professional help, of course. We have lots of people coming in to see us. So I think that's really, really interesting. So there's a good spread of strategies. I think I've probably tried all those in the past. What I'd really like you to do is really be smart about it. Don't be taking painkillers to stay in the game if there's any possibility that you're making things worse. That is for sure. So think about what is your plan? What do you do when you encounter pain? What have you done in the past? perhaps what should you be doing in the future? You know, I think a lot about my health. As I said, I'm playing the long game. I have a well thought out plan. But have you thought things through? Yeah. Don't just leave things for chance. I don't know whether you're athletes or weekend warriors, but what I do know is that it's nothing worse than, as an athlete, to be sidelined. And what I want you to do today is just think about what I'm talking about. I'm trying to set the scene, try and get something out of this presentation. Think about what you might be missing out on. And it might be something simple as stretching, or maybe well, I think Chris is going to go on. She's going to mention posture. She's going to mention all sorts of things. Maybe there's something that you can add to your daily regime, something that you're missing at the moment. And so do stay tuned, because Chris will be going through some very simple but highly effective strategies to help protect yourselves. So why chiropractic? Let's move that out of the way. Why chiropractic? Why do I think that you should use chiropractic? Well, I like to say I don't want you to become a chiropractor, but I do want you to start to think like a chiropractor. Remember, chiropractic is about getting the most from life, which is what we're talking about. It's about making smart decisions and not becoming a victim, which is what this is all about. Adopting a wellness lifestyle and ultimately avoiding injury. But if you do get injured, how should you proceed thinking like a chiropractor? Well, you have to know that your body wants to heal. It wants to heal. We've just got to give it the best possible chance. And that's what we do with chiropractic, by restoring function, restoring alignment, restoring blood supply to those damaged joints. This gives it the best possible chance to heal properly. This is a very modern life. It's very sedentary, and we do end up with all this stiffness. So injury is inevitable. So you have to have something in your life that helps balance all this damage that seemingly is inevitable. And that's why in my life, chiropractic is absolutely necessary. And we have thousands of people that come into our clinics every week. And for most of these people, chiropractic is a necessary thing. We restore and maintain range of motion. Life is more comfortable, and you are far less likely to injure yourself. So as a chiropractor, we need to think about structure. So let's look at our structure a little bit closer. Inside us, we've got our skeletal frame. And there's one on the left. It looks like it's in balance. But on the outside, of course, we've got our muscles. Well, let's think about it. Let's think about this. If our skeletal frame is out of balance, so maybe you've got twisted things, then you are going to have muscles that are tight, muscles that are weak. If you're leaning to one side, then you're going to have muscle inequality. That's just the way it is. It's entirely inevitable. And then, of course, you have stiffness. Then you have, of course, loss of function. And then eventually you have a weak point, and this is where your injuries will come from. Okay, so chiropractic is really about restoring that skeletal frame so the muscles can be balanced, and then they can be resilient. Now, there's something else that I want you to understand. I normally mention this because it's so important, especially when it comes to sports people. And we work with many sports people, whether they're amateur and pros. There is something called reciprocal inhibition. I'm sure Chris will touch on this. But wherever you have a tight muscle, so there's my bicep. If I've got a tight bicep moving my arm, then I know to allow the movement of the bone, the tricep is inhibited. So quite simply, one muscle fires, one is inhibited. It's called reciprocal inhibition. But what it means that in our body, when we have areas of tightness, we also have areas of weakness. And again, of course, this might be the shoulders, tightness at the back or whatever, but this is where injury comes from. I'm sure Chris is going to talk about this. So I'm not going to talk any more about that. It's very important, especially if you are taking sports more seriously. And it's no surprise to me that 90% of professional athletes all have chiropractors. Why is this? Because it comes down to tiny little percentages. If you can run a little bit faster, if you can hit a little bit harder, if you can take bigger hits and get up and bounce back without being injured, then you can train harder. This is rugby, my sport. And by training hard and looking after myself, I was good for decades, but eventually it caught up with me. Traditionally in the past, the medics, whether it be the doctors, the physios, they simply treated injury. But nowadays, we take a different look at it, a different approach. Nowadays, it's more about prevention. We want to have maximum mobility, movement. We don't want to be moving with any stiffness at all. And it's all about maximum performance. And then, of course, yes, under chiropractic care, there is less pain. It helps you heal. But also, there's more important things when you're a professional. You're going to have faster reflexes, greater strength, flexibility, and resilience. So what does that mean? It means you can train harder. That gives you that extra % so that you can reach the top of your sport. And of course, you're going to be able to take that hit. After our adjustments, range of motion is restored. You have better motor control. Your movement patterns, whether you're a sprinter or a swimmer, you have better enhanced movement patterns and greater strength. And then, of course, it applies to all of us. Remember, we're all athletes in some way, shape, or form, because life is a marathon. So I think that we all have this vision in our head of how we'd love to be. We want to be fit, we want to be healthy, we want to look good, right? And we want to age gracefully. But this is a crazy, mixed up, unnatural world, and we stiffen, we develop poor posture, and ultimately we are prone to injury. So we need to be proactive. We need a simple plan. So I implore you to start listening to your body more. My job as a chiropractor is to help you live a long, healthy, pain-free life. And that's why I'm out here putting together little presentations like this. I want you to live to your potential in life, whatever it is. And to do that, it would be very helpful if you started thinking like a chiropractor. So thank you for listening to me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pass the screen over to Chris. She's going to boot things up. And so remember, Chris is from Fitness First. She's their fitness and conditioning manager. So please, I'll hand you over to her. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you for listening to me. I shall see you at the end. I shall come back on. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tim. Hope you guys are having fun getting some tips so far. So I'm going to share my screen. I think everyone can see my screen. All right, so leading on, still the same topic, how to reduce risk of sports injuries. Before we get started, just a little introduction about myself. This is my 11th year in the fitness industry. And what I'm really passionate about is to help people move better or exercise without pain. So when I first started off in the fitness industry, I started off as a group fitness instructor. So I really like the energy in group fitness classes where you get to work out and motivate members. And to me back then, it was go hard or go home. And I think about the third year as a group fitness instructor, I eventually suffered from quite a few injuries, some groin strain, hip flexor strain, as well as patella femoral, the kneecap, the tracking of the kneecap. So I took many courses in the quest of building a bulletproof body, and only to find that the best way to not be injured is to not do anything at all. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, the human body is made to move with purpose, and doing nothing at all is not something that the human is designed to do. So in relation to sports injuries, what we're going to be looking at will be three things, or what I'll be covering will be three things. Number one, how do injuries happen? Number two, looking at our current lifestyle. And number three, some strategies to overcome or to minimize the risk of injuries. So number one, how do injuries occur? So aside from what Dr. Tim mentioned just now about acute and chronic, actually acute and chronic made out of some of the injuries over here. So number one will be overuse. Example will be tennis elbow, golfer's elbow. Those are an example of overusing the muscles around the forearm that causes the joint to be painful. Number two will be direct impact. As you can see from the picture over here, it's probably a direct impact towards the joint that will cause pain or an injury around the knee. And number three would be overexertion. Overexertion isn't only limited to the gym, it's also what we do on our daily activities as well. It can be lifting something that is really too heavy, if we're jogging outside, we tend to push ourselves too hard and too fast. So there are three ways that injuries can occur. Some of these are acute, some of these are chronic. More often than not, the overused ones are the chronic ones, and direct impact overexertion are the acute injuries. Okay, so let me just mute some people because I hear some background music, background sound. Okay, so continuing from here, now that we found out that how injuries occur, before moving into the solutions, let's just also take a look at our posture. Okay, so first things first, we need to recognize that our body is what we made it to be. So as Dr. Tim mentioned earlier, bodybuilders are tight, like they keep shortening their muscles. So they look chunky because that's what they do all the time, keep pumping the muscles. Yogis are bendy because all they do is stretch. So now it's round 2 work from home. And I think a lot of us are in this sitting position throughout the day. And guess what? Our body adapts to the sitting position. So on the upper body, you can take a look at the left side, there will be a rounded posture. Okay, there will be a rounded posture as a result of tight chest as well as tight upper traps over here. And if you take a look on the right side, the lower body of the pelvic area, there will be a hyperextension of the lumbar spine of the lower back. You can call this the Donald Duck posture. This is because the hip flexors, as a result of prolonged sitting, becomes really tight that affects the joints. So when one muscle is tight, we talk about tight muscles. When one muscle is tight, the reciprocal inhibition states that the opposite will be lengthened. So there's tight muscles, there's lengthened muscles, and this is what we call muscle imbalance. So as Dr. Tim has mentioned earlier as well, that when muscles are in balanced state, the joints are not in an ideal alignment, and the muscles which are supposed to fire are not firing. Hence, when you perform certain exercise or movements, it creates a lot of stress around the joints, causing pain. Okay, so also considering one more thing, our activities. Can I just get the poll? Oops. Okay, poll number 4. So what is your current exercise routine? If you can spend maybe 5 seconds to just share with me, what is your current exercise routine? Is it cycling, running, home workout HIIT, or others, meaning not doing anything? All right. All right, so I'm really curious to know what the others are. Maybe you could type it down in the chat box and share with me what does others mean. Anyways, thank you for sharing so we can actually see, oh, it's still going up, that others are quite a popular one. But on top of that, we've also got running as well as home workout. Okay, so ending the poll right now. And yes, indeed, because now that we're working from home, the gyms are closed, everyone is turning to the next best alternative, which is everything that you can do down the road, which is running. So if you take a look at all these movements, running, biking, as well as all these body weight movements, which can be done at home, it's very popular in the online HIIT classes. Not that it's not good, it's just that it's more dominant towards the tight muscles that we have previously talked about. Okay, so we've got the hip flexors being really tight already. Running, also hip flexors. Cycling, hip flexors. Squats, mountain climbers, burpees, also hip flexors, hip flexor dominant. So in that way, if we continue moving this way, it will actually aggravate more pain, in particular in the lower back as well as the knee. So other than doing nothing, I've got 3 strategies for you, and these strategies are not mutually exclusive. More often than not, it's a combination of strategies that forms your exercise routine. So the first strategy is to have a thorough warm-up routine. So as we've mentioned earlier, on the left side, you can see this person with really tight hip flexors, and especially more so if you're sitting down a lot. And what we tend to do is that we jump straight into the workout, or we just jog slower as part of a warm-up. Not that it's wrong, it's just not complete. Because with muscular imbalances, we definitely need to do something to address this imbalance before we start working out. So what I have for you is this 4 steps: RMAR. R, release tight muscles. M, mobilize joints. A, activate sleepy muscles. R, raise heart rate. So under release tight muscles, you can use a foam roller, you can use a massage ball, you can use a massage gun. So for a posture like this, we recommend foam rolling or releasing the hip flexors as well as thighs, and getting into the inner thighs as well, 1 to 2 minutes on each muscle group on each side. The second point is to mobilize joints. So movements here are pretty similar to a stretch. I call it a moving stretch. And the purpose of this part is to actually mobilize or move the joint. So when you move the joint, it releases synovial fluid, which increases the range of motion of the joint, which is what we want. Number 3, activate sleepy muscles. Again, relating to this posture over here, because the hip flexors are tight, as a result, the glutes, which is the butt, as well as the abdominals are weak. So in that way, we need to perform some simple isolated movements like glute bridges to wake up the glutes and dead bug to wake up the core. And lastly, raise heart rate. That's when we jump into the movement specific warm-up that we're doing, like jogging before you run, or cycling at a lower intensity, or performing some movements like squats, push-ups at 50% intensity before you jump into your HIIT workout. So just showing you guys some of the pictures of the movements that we had earlier. So you can see that the first 2 pictures over here are using the foam roller to release the hip flexors as well as the inner thighs at the bottom. The next 2 are mobilizers, which mobilize the joints. The first one is the world's greatest stretch in focusing on the hip joint. And the next one will be Cossack squat. And what we have over here is glute bridges as well as dead bug. Okay, so the first tip is to have a thorough warm-up routine. The second tip is to engage in resistance training. So if your goal is to work on sports like running and cycling, what you want to do is to actually establish a resistance training goal of muscular endurance. So there's different types of resistance training goals. Example, the most famous one would be muscular hypertrophy, a growth in muscle size. That would be more of the bodybuilders, the physique athletes' goal. There's also muscular strength, where powerlifters aim to carry as heavy as they can in a squat, in a bench press, in a deadlift. So those are different athletes. And if you, like I mentioned earlier, if your goal is to cycle and to run, you would want to work on muscular endurance. How do you work on muscular endurance? Frequency, 2 to 3 sessions a week. 8 to 10 exercises focusing more on lower body to build lower body endurance, because cycling and running are lower body exercises. 12 to 16 repetition maximum. Repetition maximum meaning to say that, let's say it's 12 repetition maximum, means that I will use a load which allows me to do 12 repetition maximum of squats. Not 30, not 40, not 15, not 16, but just 12. So this means to say that when you have a muscular goal, you would definitely need external load to help you achieve that response. 2 to 3 sets in total, 30 seconds rest in between sets, and 48 hours of rest in between sessions. That's resistance training. Number 3 is to also incorporate a mobility routine into your workout. So at the bare minimum, we should be engaging, we should be performing stretches at the bare minimum. All right, this can be done daily or at least after workouts, which most people tend to skip. I think some of you are guilty of that. And with a 15 to 60 seconds hold, not just a 3-second 1, 2, 3, but rather a 15 to 60 seconds hold and at least 4 repetitions per muscle group. So there are people who comes and tell me, oh, I don't want to stretch because it's so painful. But guess what? These people are the people who are really tight, and these people are also the ones that need the stretch. So the stiffer you are, the more you need to do the stretch. So these are the 3 tips that I have for you guys. If there's any questions, you can email me directly after the session, or if you want to link up with me on social media, I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So you can message me if you have any more questions after the session. All right, so thank you so much. I'm gonna hand it back to Dr. Tim. Stop share here.
Okay, now it's time for some question and answers. I believe there are quite a number of questions being asked. For Dr. Tim and Chris, do you mind, answering some of the questions which is being posed by our followers? I think the first one will be the heel always hurts, and whenever I play soccer, is there a problem with my foot or is my boots? Anyone will want to answer on that?
Do you want to go first, Dr. Tim, or? Yeah, the first one. I think
Dr.
you're
Tim,
muted.
Unmute.
Yeah.
All right, you should have me back. Okay, my heel always hurts when I play soccer. It's the problem with my foot, or is it my boots? Well, it could really be either. The heel is designed to take force. It's the calcaneus. It's the calcaneus bone that's meant to take the force. But it can be a number of things. The biomechanics of the foot are very complicated. There's lots of bones in the foot. If you develop flat feet, then that can cause heel pain and bone spurs right there, because you've lost the natural spring in your foot, and the natural arch that's now flat causes pulling of the ligament on the heel. So that's something I would be definitely looking at, is do you have an arch? So you could probably try some arch supports, and then of course you can try looking at your shoe as well. So when it's the heel, the first thing to do is look at the alignment of the foot itself. Okay, I hope that helps. I don't know whether Christine has got anything to add to that.
I agree. It's either the foot or the boot. So you don't know if we're not there. We're not there to see, so we wouldn't know. I think Dr. Tim has really good suggestions. And for me, I think you can start to try to foam roll onto your calves and see if that helps. Yeah.
I agree. Dr. Tim, what is a good pain reliever? Painkillers or cream? Any recommendations? Well, I guess it depends on the nature of, if it's on the nature of the injury. If it's a joint, then very often pills might help. You have to understand, I'm a chiropractor. I really prefer going the natural way. So you should be taking natural anti-inflammatories anyway, like turmeric, etc. There are various natural creams and lotions and potions that you can actually rub into your muscles if it's muscle aches. Sometimes you need to experiment a little bit and find something that works for yourself. I know that when I had knee problems, I tried everything, and in the end, it was for me, it was a mixture of both, really. But as I said, training while I was taking pain medication was not good in the end. So if there's a problem in there, you really want to be looking to resolve the underlying cause of the problem. Hope that helps.
Okay, I think there's one more question. Most probably will be, will doing daily stretching exercise be good or unnecessary? Chris, would you like to answer this?
Will doing daily stretching exercise be good or unnecessary? I think first things first, it really depends on whether you're someone who is stiff or if you're someone who is hypermobile. So if you're someone who is stiff, definitely you would benefit from doing daily stretching exercises. But if you're super flexible, you're hypermobile, there's no point in doing daily stretching exercises. Yeah. Dr. Tim, want to add on to that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. When you mention hypermobility, that hypermobility is in the ligaments, but you still need to stretch. You still need to stretch the muscles. So you want to be engaging more in rolling, foam rolling those muscles. But you still really need to stretch them, but don't overstretch the joints. Hope that helps.
Okay, next question will be, my husband and I both have slip discs. For Dr. Tim, does chiropractor helps or operation is the only way? For Chris, can I still visit the gym?
Right, well, I'll jump in there. So can chiropractic help with slip discs? Yes, absolutely. This is what we do almost every single day. You have to go back to the etiology, the cause of the problem. Discs don't slip anywhere. What they do is they degenerate, they lose their properties, and then they tend to prolapse or herniate. And so they're not really slipping, they're just starting to bulge. And what we need to do is find out what the cause of the problem is. Is it lack of movement? Is it poor alignment? Whatever it is, when we fix the cause of the problem and restore good function to the joint, then very, very often the slip disc finds resolution. There are some statistics which I find really interesting. One is that if you've got a disc problem and you go to an orthopedic surgeon, excuse me, you are probably got a 70% chance that you're going to end up with some kind of surgery, which doesn't always go well. I know that in my clinics that we fix over 95% of slip discs. They are something that is a process over time. It's a matter of recognizing it early, and before you get any kind of catastrophic disc failure that means you have to have surgery, I really do recommend you come in and let us have a look at it, because in all likelihood we can get you fixed up. Okay.
Yeah, I do agree with finding the root cause of the problem. As for the gym, I think you would still want to look for Dr. Tim, get the foundations fixed before you hit the gym. Yeah, there are quite a few of my clients that have slip discs, and after restoring the basic function of the joints, and they do come to the gym with the goal of strengthening the muscles. Once they've got stronger muscles, then of course you've got a stronger spine and a stronger structure. So yes, you still can visit the gym, but of course, do look for chiropractor to help you sort the fundamental reason first. All right.
So one more question will be, my boyfriend have this ACL thing on his knee. Went through an operation. His knee still hurts when he jogs or play football. Can you help?
So your boyfriend's had an ACL thing. Okay, well, I understand that. That's the anterior cruciate ligament. So he's had either some kind of break or he's had a tear in his ACL. He's had an operation to strengthen it, still hurts. So, maybe it's still in the acute stage. Maybe it hasn't had time to rehabilitate. One thing that he absolutely must do is strengthen his knee. Make sure he both stretches the quads, the calf muscles, and strengthen them. He also wants to do some functional exercises, so perhaps using wobble boards and things like that to create some instability, so he develops really good reflexes, protective reflexes, functional reflexes that will help protect that knee. And then of course he should take something like turmeric or something like that to reduce the inflammation. So that would be my handle on your boyfriend's knee.
Okay, move off to another question. It will be Christine. My wife is pregnant. Now she has to stop all sports and exercise. Is there anything she can do? For Dr. Tim, I heard that is chiropractic adjustment is good for pregnancy. How does it help?
So I guess I'll go first. So I'm not sure why your wife has to stop all sports and exercise when she's pregnant, because actually some form of movement or exercise is encouraged, especially when women are pregnant. Of course, there are lots of exercise that she can do, but the two things that are most important, number one, Kegel exercises. Those are exercises to strengthen the pelvic floor. Those are super important. And number two, I think your wife could also benefit from working, strengthening the muscles on the posterior chain. So the back muscles, the lower back muscles, the glutes, those are some of the muscles that are super important to strengthen, because as a woman gets pregnant, the stomach gets bigger and bigger because of the baby. And as a result, the center of gravity or center of mass shifts. So in that way, the back muscles are super important to strengthen. So that's my take.
And that's a very good take, Christine. I'll just add a little bit. About 18 years ago, my wife was pregnant with twins. So this was early in my chiropractic days, but what I did realize was that if she wanted a healthy multiple pregnancy, then she had to be fit with it. So we really worked with her. And she would come into the clinic. We would gently adjust her pelvis to make sure that she had good, the best possible chance for deliveries. And then she spent an awful lot of time sitting on exercise balls, just sitting, gently moving, keeping function in there. It worked the natural reflexes in the musculature around the low back. And I believe it went an awful long way to giving her a successful and a very healthy pregnancy. So you've got to maintain some kind of strength. And then of course you want to spring back after you've delivered your baby. So I really don't think that you should take 6 months off or 9 months off. I really think you should be exercising. What's interesting, I'm an Englishman, and what I do know is the British royal family are riding their horses all the way through pregnancy, almost to the end. Now, I'm sure they're not galloping and jumping, but they are that rhythmic movement of a horse. And you can guarantee that the royal doctors are keeping very close eye on them. But that rhythmic movement, which we replaced by sitting on an exercise ball, is very good, not only for the mother, but also for the baby. It helps develop the brain of the baby with all that movement. So don't be afraid, learn about it, but of course, be careful. That's my advice.
Okay, comes down to the last question. I think this is for Dr. Tim. Can traditional Chinese medication works together with chiro?
TCM works absolutely with chiro, yeah, because most of TCM is symptomatic relief. So whether it be cupping, whether it be acupuncture or muscle scraping, or and then of course they have many lotions and potions. Most of it is natural and perfectly good. So I like TCM. I think that you should be a little bit careful sometimes with the practitioners that do manipulative therapy. So just make sure that they know what they're doing. Some of them certainly do. I've met some masters, some amazing people, but there again, I've also met some people who have caused damage. So be careful. But to answer you, yeah, TCM works brilliantly with chiropractic. We restore function, and they help minimize the symptoms.
Yep, thank you. That will be the last question. Yep. Is there anything that you would like to add on for Dr. Tim and Chris?
Well, that's really good. I've really enjoyed this whole thing. I'd like to thank Christine enormously. I really enjoyed that. I did say earlier on that I want everybody to take something away. Well, Christine has made me realize that I need to stretch my hip flexors more. I do it quite a lot, but I do know I need to do it more. So that's my big takeaway. Please have a look at the screen. If you know anybody out there who needs to come in, anybody who's been suffering from injuries, then please take a picture of this with your phone or use that QR code. This will help people find their way into one of our 5 clinics. That's a hugely subsidized rate, $45 instead of $170. And then I'd like to also remind any Fitness First, I nearly said patients, but clients out there, you are all, because we partner with Fitness First, our job is very much to help keep you in the game. Then you are all able to come into our clinics at a hugely reduced rate as well. So take advantage of that. And I'd like to thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, this has all been recorded so that you'll see it on our social media. I'd like to thank Jerry for setting this up. And once again, Christine, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed your presentation. And anybody out there wants to come and see either Christine at Fitness First or myself at Total Health Chiropractic, we are here for you. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and I shall catch up with you all very soon. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Bye.
You are all very welcome. Thank you very much.
Because she'd gone for about 40 minutes, but luckily she was perfect.
It wasn't 40 minutes, actually. It was,
Yeah.
It was longer.
Saved it.
I've lost me. I've just lost me.
Oh.
I don't know why.
That was good. That's good to do it closed a minute with somebody.
Hmm.
Huh?
Hmm.
We'll talk about those polls. Thanks, Lisa. As you can see what's coming in, but of course other people can't.
Oh, they can't?
No. So I didn't realise that because that was my first time I wasn't as a co-host.
Right.
So I was just looking at you, looking at the thing.
Right.
And show needs to stop recording, yeah.
The show's ended, so I'm sure.
Oh, I suppose when you think, yeah. Good girl, Rosie.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. What's this still on here then?
Hmm?
If you left.
Connection lost. I need to do the batteries.